Most people don't know that there's a specific stretch of Route 23 between Columbus and Cincinnati where things happen. Not accidents, not weather-related incidents, things that don't have explanations. I'm gonna tell you about Marcus, a truck driver who learned this the hard way. Marcus had been driving long haul for 17 years. He knew every highway in the Midwest like the back of his hand a euro. The safe routes, the dangerous stretches, the truck stops with decent coffee. Route 23 was his regular run, 3 times a week, usually at night when traffic was minimal. He preferred it that way. Less chaos, better time. That was his mantra: get in, get out, get paid. On a cold November evening, around midnight, Marcus was making his usual run. The weather was clear, the road was empty, and his playlist was blaring country music through his truck's speakers. He'd made this drive probably 1,000 times. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular euro, just counting down the miles until his next break at the Pine Ridge truck stop. That's when he saw her. She was standing on the shoulder of the road, illuminated by his headlights, like a ghost emerging from the darkness. She wore a white dress, 1952nd style, completely out of place on a modern highway at 1:30 inches in the morning. More unsettling was that there was nothing around her for miles a euro. No broken down car, no houses, nothing that explained why she would be there. Marcus should have kept driving. His instincts screamed at him to do exactly that. But he was a decent man, a father of 2, and the thought of leaving someone stranded in the cold didn't sit right with him. He slowed his truck and pulled onto the shoulder about 20 yards past her. When he turned around in his cabin to look through the rear window, she was already at his door. She'd moved impossibly fast. He could see her clearly now in the cab's interior light a euro. Young, maybe early 20s, with dark hair and pale skin. Her dress was pristine, not a wrinkle, not a speck of dirt. She smiled at him, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something he didn't. "Thank you for stopping," she said when he cracked open the door. Her voice was soft, almost melodic, but there was something wrong about it. It sounded like it was coming through water, distorted somehow. "Are you okay? Is your car broken down?" Marcus asked, keeping the door mostly closed. "I need to get to Cincinnati," she said, completely ignoring his question. "Will you take me?" Marcus hesitated. Every warning light in his brain was flashing. This was exactly the kind of situation that ended badly. But she was just standing there, looking lost and cold, and he couldn't bring himself to refuse. "Yeah, okay, get in." She climbed into the passenger seat without another word, and Marcus continued down Route 23. He tried to make conversation a few times, but she only stared straight ahead at the road. She never blinked, not once in 20 minutes. Marcus began to notice other things too, euro. The temperature in the cab had dropped significantly, despite the heater running at full blast. His breath was visible now. Frost was forming on the windows from the inside. "You're not from around here, are you?" Marcus tried, desperate to break the unsettling silence. "I'm from here," she said quietly. "I've always been from here. What's your name?" She turned to look at him, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. Her eyes were completely black a euro, not dark brown, not shadowed, completely, impossibly black, like 2 voids in her skull. "My name is Margaret," she said. "I died on this road in 1957. A man picked me up, just like you did. He drove me to Cincinnati, just like you're going to. But halfway there, he got tired of me. He pulled into a rest area, and..." She trailed off, still staring at him with those empty eyes. He was never the same after. None of them were. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His heart was hammering in his chest. He wanted to pull over, wanted to throw her out of his truck, wanted to wake up and realize this was all a nightmare. But his body wasn't responding correctly. He felt paralyzed. I don't believe in ghosts," Marcus whispered. "That's good," Margaret said, turning back to face the road. "Because I'm not a ghost. I'm something that's been waiting on this road for a very long time, and I'm very grateful you stopped." They drove in silence for another hour. Marcus's mind was racing, but his body felt sluggish, as if moving through water. He had no control over his hands a euro. They stayed on the wheel, his foot stayed on the gas. It was as if something else was driving now, and he was just a passenger in his own body. When they passed the Cincinnati exit, Margaret spoke again. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "You stopped. You helped. That's more than the others ever did. I'm going to give you a gift instead." Marcus felt something cold press into his palm. He looked down to see a golden locket in his hand. It was ornate, beautiful, and absolutely freezing to the touch. When he opened it, He saw a photograph in sight Euro, a young woman in a 1,950 seconds dress smiling at the camera. It was Margaret, looking exactly as she did now, except her eyes in the photo were normal. "That's so you'll remember," Margaret said. "So you'll know this was real, and so you'll warn others. Tell them not to stop on Route 23 at night. Tell them I'm still here, and I'm still collecting rides." When Marcus looked to his right, the passenger seat was empty. The cold vanished instantly, and warmth flooded back into the cab. The locket was still in his hand. Marcus drove the rest of the way to Cincinnati in shock. He never told anyone what happened to Euro. Who would believe him? But he kept the locket. And he never drove Route 23 at night again. 3 months later, another truck driver reported picking up a woman in a white dress on Route 23. He said he drove her to Cincinnati, but when he looked over at a red light, she was gone. He found a golden locket on the passenger seat. He never drove that road again either. The lockets keep appearing. Truck drivers keep finding them. And every single person who's found one has stopped driving Route 23 at night. But new drivers, who don't know the stories, they keep picking her up, and she's still collecting her rides, still waiting for someone to listen to her story. Because Margaret was never interested in revenge. She was just tired of being alone. If you're looking for an apartment in the city on a budget, you learn not to ask too many questions. You look at the numbers, you look at the location, and you make a decision. James didn't have the luxury of being picky. His divorce had left him broke, and his new job barely paid enough for a studio. So when he found the apartment on 47th Street listed at half the market price, he didn't investigate too deeply. He just signed the lease. The building was old, pre-war construction, the kind that was probably beautiful once but had been allowed to decay over decades. His apartment was on the 4th floor, a one-bedroom with hardwood floors and high ceilings. The first night, James barely noticed the cold spot in the corner of the bedroom. He was too exhausted. The second night, he couldn't ignore it. The cold started at the foot of his bed around midnight. Not a drop to Euro. James checked the windows and doors thoroughly. It was a localized cold, intensifying as the night went on, until the entire corner of his bedroom felt like a walk-in freezer. By 3 a.m., his breath was visible and frost was forming on the windows near that corner. By morning, it was gone. James called his landlord, a perpetually unamused man named Victor. "The heating's probably just uneven in the old building," Victor said with a shrug. "You get used to it." But Victor wouldn't look him in the eye when he said it. That was the first sign that something was wrong. Over the next week, other things started happening. James would come home and find his apartment had been rearranged Euro, not dramatically, but small things. The couch cushions would be in different positions. His books would be reorganized on the shelf. His kitchen cabinet would be open. Each time, James wondered if he was going crazy, until the night he came home to find every single light in his apartment turned on, despite the fact that he'd left them all off that morning. He was starting to realize that Victor had deliberately rented him this apartment cheaply. He'd gotten rid of other tenants by not telling them about whatever was happening here. The research came next. James spent hours at the public library, going through old newspapers on microfiche. It took him 3 days of searching, and finally found what he was looking for. In 1983, a woman named Claire Morrison had been found dead in that apartment. The article was brief, unclear about the cause of death. It just said she'd been discovered by her downstairs neighbor who reported a smell. The police report was vague. No criminal charges were filed. The case went cold. James tried to find more information, but the trail was old and cold. He did find one more mention, a small article from 1984 about another tenant in the same building who'd moved out due to personal circumstances. Then another in 1987, and another in 1992. Always the same building, sometimes the same apartment. That's when James understood. Whatever was in his apartment, it had been there for over 40 years. It had driven out countless tenants. And Victor, for whatever reason, kept letting apartments to people who didn't know any better. The final night came about 2 weeks after James moved in. He woke up at 3 a.m. to find his apartment wasn't cold. It was warm. Too warm. Oppressively warm. Like the air had been baked in an oven. His sheets were soaked with sweat, and standing at the foot of his bed was a woman. She was translucent, barely visible, but James could make out her features. She looked sad, desperately sad, like someone who'd been crying for 40 years without stopping. She wore a nightgown from another era, and there was something wrong with her wrists, Euro. They were bruised, marked with deep indentations, as if she'd worn tight restraints. "Why are you here?" James whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm not leaving," she replied, her voice like wind through an empty room. "He said I could never leave. He said if I tried to tell anyone, he'd find me and hurt me worse. So, I've stayed. And I'll always stay. And anyone who comes here has to hear me. Has to know." "Know what?" James asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. "My name was Claire Morrison. I came to this city to start a new life. I met a man who seemed nice. He seemed kind. He rented me this apartment. And one night he came to see me, and he wouldn't leave. He said I owed him money. I said I'd pay next week. He said that wasn't good enough. He said." Her voice broke. "He said I'd have to work for him. And when I refused, when I tried to fight, he tied me to this bed. He left me here for 3 days. And She faded, becoming more translucent, until she was barely a shadow. But her voice continued, stronger now, more desperate. "No one came. No one helped. The landlord knew. People heard me. And no one came. I died here. And I can't leave because I'm still waiting for someone to come. I'm still hoping someone will help me. But they never do. They just leave, like you will. Everyone leaves." James didn't remember getting out of bed. He didn't remember running from the apartment or driving to the police station. But somehow, at 4 a.m., he was sitting in a precinct in Queens, telling a tired desk sergeant about a haunting on 47th Street. The police took a report. They went to the apartment. They found nothing unusual. The detective assigned to James's case, a woman named Rodriguez, was sympathetic but skeptical. She ran a records check and found Claire Morrison's case file, but it was sealed. Whatever had happened, the city wasn't talking. James got his security deposit back €1. Victor didn't even argue €1 and never looked back. But before he left, Rodriguez gave him something. She slipped him a photocopy of a name and an address. "That's the guy who killed her," she whispered. "Everyone knew it, but the case was sealed for reasons I don't understand. I'm not supposed to tell you, but it's wrong that you don't know." The man's name was Marcus Hendricks. He'd been a building superintendent back then. He died in 1997, struck by a car in what was officially ruled an accident. Rodriguez thought James should know €1, thought everyone should know, but the apartment on 47th Street is still there. Victor still owns the building, and he still rents out that apartment to people who don't know any better. Every few months, there's a new tenant. Every few months, they move out in the middle of the night, too terrified to stay. And in that apartment, in that dark corner of that building, Claire is still waiting for someone to finally help her. Still hoping that one day, someone will do more than run away. That someone, finally, will be brave enough to stay. There's a phenomenon that police departments across North America know about, but don't really talk about. It's called the inside call, or sometimes the repeat caller. The details vary, but the pattern is always the same. Someone calls 911, claiming to be trapped in a location. Sometimes giving an address, sometimes not. The call is traced. Police are dispatched. They arrive at the location and find nothing. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, no signs that anyone besides the homeowner has been there in months. Then the calls keep coming. This happened to Sarah Chen for 3 weeks straight. It started on a Tuesday night when her phone rang at 1:01 p.m. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?" A woman's voice, panicked, terrified. Please call the police. Someone has me locked in here. They brought me to a house, I don't know where, but I can see a street sign. It says Maple Drive, and they said they're going to hurt me. Please, you have to help me." "What? Wait, slow down. Have you called 911? Sarah asked, bewildered. "I can't. My phone won't work properly, but I can call out to random numbers through this old phone in the basement. I don't know how, but please, you have to send help." Sarah called 911 immediately and reported the call. She gave them the details of Euro Maple Drive, a woman in a basement, urgent. The police said they'd look into it. They called her back an hour later to say they'd checked all the houses on Maple Drive and found nothing unusual. The dispatcher thought it might have been a prank call or someone with a mental health crisis who had dialed numbers randomly. Sarah tried to forget about it. She went to bed. But around 2 a.m., her phone rang again. Same unknown number. The same woman. Still panicked. Why hasn't anyone come? Why haven't they found me? Please, I'm running out of time. I can hear him coming back. I can hear the door. Who is doing this? Who has you? Sarah demanded. I don't know. I was at the mall and I parked my car and someone just put something over my face and I woke up here and the line went dead. Sarah immediately called 911 again. This time, the dispatcher was less sympathetic. Ma'am, we've already checked. There's no one on Maple Drive who's reported a kidnapping. This sounds like a hoax. It's not a hoax, Sarah insisted. Someone is really in danger, but they wouldn't send anyone. They'd already wasted resources on the first call. The calls continued. 3 times that first night, twice the next day. The woman Euro, who identified herself as Lisa Euro, was always terrified, always insisting her captor was coming back, always giving cryptic details about her location. She mentioned a blue house with white shutters. She mentioned hearing trains in the distance. She mentioned a basement with a small window that showed shoes walking past at street level. Sarah became obsessed. She started mapping out areas near Maple Drive that had trains, looking for blue houses, trying to pinpoint exactly where this woman might be. She called 911 repeatedly. Each time, the police would either refuse to come or would go through the motions and find nothing. On day 5, a detective named Marcus Warren finally came to Sarah's house. He seemed tired and frustrated, like he'd been assigned the crazy lady case as punishment. Miss Chen, we've done extensive searching. We've checked not just Maple Drive, but every location she's mentioned. There's no sign of any kidnapping. No missing persons reports match her description. No vehicles abandoned anywhere. We've even checked the old train tunnels. So what am I supposed to do? Sarah asked desperately. Just ignore her calls? She's clearly in danger. Here's what I think, Warren said, pulling out a tablet to show her some data. The calls are coming from a VoIP service, a free online calling service. Someone could be using it from anywhere. It's probably someone with a mental illness who's latched onto your number, or it could be someone messing with you. Either way, there's no actual person in physical danger. But Sarah knew he was wrong. She could hear the genuine terror in Lisa's voice. This wasn't someone who was mentally ill a Euro. This was someone truly experiencing horror, truly experiencing danger. On day 8, Lisa's calls became stranger. Instead of asking for help, she started saying things like, I'm so tired of being here. I'm so tired of this. Can I come home? I just want to go home. And then, wait, how did you get my number? How do you keep calling me? Sarah realized with a chill that Lisa thought she was the one making the calls. Lisa thought Sarah had kidnapped her and was calling her to torment her. No, Sarah tried to explain. You've been calling me. You've been trying to get me to help you. There was a long silence on the line. Then Lisa's voice, small and confused. But I don't have a phone. I don't have anything here. How am I talking to you? That's when Sarah realized the truth. She didn't know how to explain it, but she knew. She wasn't receiving calls from Lisa. She was making calls to Lisa. Somehow, every time her phone rang with this unknown number, Sarah was dialing into a basement somewhere, forcing the voice of a terrified woman into her ear. And every time Sarah answered, every time Sarah engaged with Lisa's story, Sarah was becoming the one doing the calling. The calls stopped after that, but Sarah got a phone bill the next month showing hundreds of calls to a number that didn't exist. Each call was hours long a Euro, hours that Sarah didn't remember making, conversations she didn't recall having. Her phone company couldn't explain it. The number wasn't real, but the bills were undeniably real. She changed her phone number, but 3 weeks later, the same calls started again, this time from another unknown number, and Lisa's voice was still there, still terrified, but now asking, "Are you the one keeping me here? Have you been keeping me here the whole time?" When Sarah tried to trace the calls herself, she made a discovery that shattered her. She looked up the address on Maple Drive that Lisa had first mentioned. The blue house with white shutters. She drove there. It was real. And when she looked at the old records for that house, she found a newspaper article from 1987. A woman named Lisa Hartman had been kidnapped from a shopping mall. She'd been found 3 days later in the basement of a blue house on Maple Drive. She'd been severely traumatized, and her captor had never been caught. Lisa Hartman had recovered physically, but had spent the rest of her life in psychiatric care, claiming she kept hearing voices, kept receiving phantom phone calls from her kidnapper. She'd committed suicide in 2001. Sarah realized then what was happening. She wasn't receiving calls from another dimension or a ghost. She was participating in something worse. She was creating a loop, a psychic connection to a trauma that had marked the area, that had burned itself into the location like a scar tissue. And by answering the call, by engaging with Lisa's terror, Sarah was becoming the instrument of that terror. She was becoming the voice that Lisa heard. Sarah moved houses. She changed her number again. She tried everything she could think of, but sometimes, late at night, when she's alone, her phone still rings. Unknown number. And Sarah doesn't answer. She can't answer, because she knows that if she does, if she engages one more time, the loop will become permanent. Lisa won't just be calling her. Sarah will become trapped on the other end of the line, and someone else will pick up one day, confused and terrified, wondering who the desperate woman begging for help really is. The calls still come, about once every few months. Sarah has learned to ignore them, but she sometimes wonders about the people who do answer. Who, right now, in their own homes, is hearing Lisa's voice? Who thinks they're receiving a call from a kidnapping victim, not realizing they're actually calling into one? And how long until they realize the truth? How long until they become part of the loop? Because that's the real horror. It's not that Lisa is still suffering. It's that her suffering has become a weapon, a trap that catches anyone empathetic enough to care. And once you care, once you engage, it's almost impossible to stop.